It was still moving, not twitching, not spasming from dying nerve signals, moving deliberately, with direction and purpose, reaching toward the piece of crab placed at the edge of the container. The octopus it came from had been removed from the tank 40 minutes ago. The arm did not know that. It found the food, it gripped it, and then it tried to carry it toward the location where the octopus's mouth used to be. Most people who hear this assume it's a simple reflex, the same way a chicken runs after its head is cut off, residual electricity in dead tissue, meaningless noise from a system shutting down. It is not that. What this arm was doing, what octopus arms do every time one of them is operating in your field of view, requires something that we don't have a clean word for. It isn't instinct, it isn't reflex, and it isn't thinking the way you and I think. It's something in between, and it changes everything about how we define intelligence. Welcome to Octopus Mind. Subscribe before you keep watching. What we're covering today sits at the edge of what neuroscience currently understands, and the last section contains a finding so strange that the researchers who made it spent 2 years checking their own data before publishing. Number 1. The architecture that should not work. A human brain contains roughly 86 billion neurons. All of them live in one place, your skull. Every signal your body sends travels up your spine to that central processor, gets evaluated, and a response travels back down. The entire system is centralized. One command center, billions of nodes. An octopus has 500 million neurons. That is not a small number for an invertebrate. It is roughly the same as a dog. But here is where everything gets strange. Only 50 million of those neurons are in the brain. The other 450 million, 90%, are distributed through the arms. Each arm contains its own ganglion, its own local processing center, its own capacity to receive sensory information, evaluate it, and generate a motor response without consulting the central brain at all. This is not a backup system. It is not an emergency override. It is the primary design. When an octopus reaches into a crevice to feel for prey, the brain does not micromanage that arm. It sends a single high-level instruction, something equivalent to search that area. And then the arm executes the entire operation independently. The arm feels the texture of the rock. It identifies the shape of a hidden crab by touch. It adjusts its grip, navigates around obstacles, and returns with the prey. The brain finds out what the arm discovered at roughly the same time you would if you were watching from outside. The octopus and its own arm are, in a meaningful sense, discovering things together. Number 2. What the arm does when it is alone. In 2001, researchers at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem conducted a series of experiments that produced results they described as disconcerting. They removed octopus arms under controlled conditions and placed them in a tank. They then introduced stimuli, a piece of food, a mild electric shock, a potential threat, and recorded the arm's responses. What they found was not random movement. The arm responded differently to different stimuli. It reached toward food with a coordinated extension and grip sequence, the same movement it would have used if it were attached to a living octopus. When threatened, it withdrew and contracted, the same defensive posture. When food was placed in its grip, it moved in the direction of where the octopus's mouth would have been. It kept doing this for up to 2 hours. 2 hours of coordinated, contextually appropriate, goal-directed behavior. In tissue that was no longer connected to any central nervous system, the researchers were careful in how they described what they observed. They avoided the word thinking. But they also wrote, directly, that the behavior could not be explained by simple reflex arcs. The arm was, by every behavioral measure they could apply, acting with something that looked like local intention. Number 3. The problem this creates for neuroscience. Here is the question the arm experiment forces you to ask. If the arm can sense, evaluate, decide, and act independently for extended periods in contextually appropriate ways, then what exactly is the brain for? The answer researchers have arrived at is coordination and personality. The central brain handles things the arms cannot manage alone. Long-range planning, learning from past experience, the integration of information from all 8 arms simultaneously, the decision about which direction to move the whole body, the social behaviors, the recognition of individual humans, the display of personality, the grudges and preferences. The arms handle execution. The brain handles strategy. But this creates a model of intelligence that looks nothing like ours. When you reach for a glass of water, your brain is running that operation from start to finish. When an octopus reaches for prey, there are 9 separate processing systems involved, 8 local ones doing the physical work, and 1 central one that may or may not be paying attention to any particular arm at any given moment. The octopus is not one thinker with 8 limbs. It is closer to 9 thinkers in a permanent negotiation. No other animal works this way, not the squid, not the cuttlefish, not any vertebrate. The octopus evolved this architecture independently from every other intelligent animal on Earth, and it works well enough that they have been solving novel problems, escaping enclosures, and recognizing individual humans for hundreds of millions of years. Number 4. What the arm knows that the brain doesn't. The distributed architecture creates something unexpected. An octopus can be surprised by its own arm. Researchers studying octopus hunting behavior noticed that in certain situations, the central brain appeared to be reacting to information it was receiving from the arms, not directing the arms based on information it already had. In other words, the arm found something and told the brain about it. The brain then updated its behavior based on the arm's report. This is not how we think about intelligence. In every model of cognition built around vertebrate brains, the central processor is the source of knowledge. The body is the instrument. In the octopus, the body is also a sensor network that operates on its own timeline and reports back to a brain that is, in certain moments, genuinely waiting to find out what its own limbs have discovered. The arm reaches into a dark crevice. The brain waits. The arm finds a crab, or a predator, or nothing. The brain learns which one it was at the same moment the arm does. You and your hand are one system. The octopus and its arms are 9 systems that have learned to cooperate. Number 5. The finding they almost didn't publish. In 2023, a research team at the Marine Biological Laboratory in Woods Hole, Massachusetts, was studying octopus arm motor patterns when they made a finding that took 2 years to verify before they felt confident publishing it. They were recording neural activity in octopus arms during rest, arms attached to living, inactive octopuses lying still on the tank floor. Not hunting, not threatened, not doing anything. The arms were generating spontaneous, coordinated neural firing sequences, not random noise, coordinated sequences, patterns of activation that moved along the arm in organized waves. The same patterns that appear during active hunting behavior, but occurring with no external trigger and no corresponding activity in the central brain. The arms were, in the absence of any instruction or stimulus, running through movement programs on their own. The researchers' interpretation was careful and hedged. They described it as possible motor rehearsal, the arm equivalent of what the human motor cortex does during sleep, consolidating movement patterns through low-level replay. What they did not say, but what the data technically permits, the arms may practice, independently, without the brain's involvement, in the quiet of the tank floor while the octopus rests. 9 systems, 1 body. And somewhere in the gap between them, in the 2 hours an arm keeps hunting after it's been separated, in the spontaneous firing of a resting limb, in the moment a brain waits to learn what its own hand found, something that doesn't fit cleanly into any definition of intelligence we currently have. We built those definitions around ourselves. The octopus was not consulted. Subscribe if you want to keep going deeper. Tell me in the comments, does this change how you think about what intelligence actually is? I read every one. I'll see you in the next one.